I'm Diane Freeney. I'm here from Portland, Oregon. I started a company called Rooted Investing to do community investing. And I met Derek through For the Children in Lake Worth here that I work with. And he asked me to come and speak here, and I said, well, why would you want an old white woman speaking to Black Tech Week? And he didn't answer me, so I thought about it, and I thought, well, he's an outsider. The Black community has been an outsider in Wall Street, and at this point, with technology and innovation, they're who we have to be looking to create the new models and the things that we need. So at this point, I think the Black community has an advantage over the traditional community, and don't give it up.
Good morning. Good afternoon. My name is Kanye Makuela. I'm a partner at Collaborative Fund. Collaborative Fund is based in New York. We are a seed stage investment fund investing at the intersection of good and profit. We've made about 50 or so investments in the seed stage, including Kickstarter, Code Academy, Lyft, TaskRabbit, Hampton Creek Foods, Good Eggs, Instacart. We are a small team, and I'm very happy to be here. That's all I got.
How you doing? Brian Dixon, principal at Caper Capital. I've been there for the last 3 years, and prior to that, I was kind of in your shoes, right? So building companies. Caper Capitals, we're a seed stage impact firm in Oakland, so happy to be in Miami right now. And if you've ever used Uber by hands, have you ever used an Uber taxi? That's one of our seed stage companies, and now we're really focused on, well, how do we make investments such as Uber, but companies that will really do well in the world, so very similar to Collaborative. And we have some co-investments in Good Eggs as well. I'm here kind of just to share the knowledge that I've kind of learned along the way from being in your shoes, but also being in a position now to invest. So.
Hello all. Hi, I'm Stonely Baptiste. 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, I co-founded a fund, a seed stage fund called Urban.us, and we are focused on the intersection of urbanization, rapid population growth in cities, and climate change. Over the last 18 months has been very educational for us. We've done 16 investments, co-investors with Caper on the most recent one. And yeah, we're very big believers that climate change is the biggest challenge that we're going to face as a species, and that urbanization can either be the accelerated cause of the problems or a solution to those challenges. So I'm here because I'm happy to support anything that Derek and Felicia put together.
All right, so let's just jump right into it. Feel free, any of you guys, just answer any question. It doesn't have to be anything formal, but a question I've been asked over the past few days is, a pretty interesting one. People always ask me, or people seem to always ask me, why not be an entrepreneur? Why become an investor? So more than happy. Feel free to answer that question. Why are you guys investing?
I got an answer for that. Those reasons were that if there was a problem out in the world that I was uniquely well suited to solve by virtue of my skills and experiences, or if there was a problem out in the world that I felt like I just had to solve, or else I just really, really, really had to solve it, right? So if there's a problem out there that's just drawing you, either because you're the only one who can solve it, or because you are gonna go nuts if it doesn't get solved, those were the only two criteria I thought at first. I've since added a third, which is if you're just unemployable, then maybe you should be an entrepreneur. And I strongly believe that if it's not one of those three criteria, then maybe you should be doing something else. And I didn't have any of those three, so I got a job.
That's a great one. I fell into the unemployable category for most of my adult career, which is why I've been an entrepreneur for the last decade, since dropping out of college. And having been an entrepreneur, my opinion is that actually of the non-idealization of entrepreneurship it's an important quality and characteristic to have, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody has to be a founder. I think the core of what you should be doing is more based on why, and then figuring out how is a derivative of that. So I figured out now at 30 that I'm interested in seeing problems get solved, and that more than anything. So being an entrepreneur was an interesting way to do that, at a very micro level, solving one problem at a time. So the reason why I'm an investor now is because I get to find teams that are solving really interesting problems, and I can help find solutions to those problems at scale. And then obviously being an early employee at a company that's rocking it and solving a problem that you're interested in is also a great option, and it's not a bad one.
I'll jump in as well. Very similar. It's when you're on the investing side, you're really, there are times where you feel like you're on the founding team. And prior to investing, I worked on 3 tech startups, and I loved it. And it was kind of, well, what can you do today to kind of scale that? We have over 100 companies in the portfolio today.
Diane, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'm at a very different level. This is rooted investing is very much down on the ground. It's community-based investing, neighborhood-based investing, and my favorite model, which I was explaining to people, is community source capital, which is out of the Pacific Northwest, which is where I'm from, and they invest. They do campaigns for small business, and these are coffee shops, hair salons, any kind of small business that you might want to see in your neighborhood. The amounts that for the campaigns can go from $5,000 to $50,000. These are businesses that typically cannot get a loan from a bank because a bank can't do something that small, and yet to the person who's wanting that business, it's huge. The investors are small people, small investors also. You can buy a square for $50, or you can buy up to 5 squares. And so you have a lot of people in your campaign who have a big interest in making your business successful. So I'm putting this out there. I know I heard about a lot of entrepreneurs this morning who were interested in starting businesses. They don't all have to be tech businesses. They need people in the community who have that coffee shop or that little restaurant, which makes them want to live in a vibrant community. So Community Source Capital is not in Miami, but they typically have local people there. So if anybody wants an introduction to them and they'd like to bring Community Source Capital to Miami, I'm happy to make that introduction.
Great, great. So, what I've learned since I've been an investor for maybe a year or so now, almost a year actually now, you get a lot of friends when you have money. How do you guys prefer to be approached or pitched by entrepreneurs? Because I'm sure as you go places and they find out that you're an investor, you get flooded with people interested in talking.
Well, actually, no, I have a preference. Yeah, I've learned and this can be a very deep topic around the value of time, and then also the value of pre-filtering who you let take your time, because the best ideas fight to be found. They don't just fall in your lap. So not that a great idea can't walk into your front door and slap you in the face, but it's much more likely that after going through the wilderness of people that you just happen to know mutually, a good idea comes to you through an inbound referral from a trusted friend or associate. So that's my #1 preferred way. And even if we know each other directly, I would rather you somehow convince somebody that I would take an inbound referral from to then refer the company to me, because it's just so hard to take in a world of pitches. So we just at Urban Us believe in at least that first filter. If we don't go out looking for it, we prefer that it comes in through a referral.
That's a great point of the referral. At Caper Capital, we started off kind of the same way. Since then, we've kind of changed because what we learned was people don't always have the intros into the network because sometimes it's really hard, right, to get the in. So we started just taking them kind of over email, right? All of our emails are now public. So we try to be out there, so it's easy. If you want to pitch Caper Capital, you know how to find us. It's not a problem to find us. Now, it does lead to another problem of the time, right? We spend a lot of time going through pitch decks that are just not ready. But that's a sacrifice that we're willing to take because we know that a lot of people don't make it past the filter.
Diane?
Yeah, I guess I come from a different place. I think capital is abundant, not scarce, and in community investing, I know I've found so many deals I would love to do, and when I've talked to the individuals, for example, my exercise trainer just built a accessory dwelling unit, a separate living unit in the backyard of her house, and she has no mortgage on it. She wanted me to loan her money, and I'm like, okay, this is a really great deal. I did the whole thing, and she came back and she said, gee, I found a better deal, and I'm like, okay, well, that's good. I'm glad, you know. But I think I've found that, Community Source Capital has found that sometimes when you work with small businesses and they really learn what their business is doing and what is capable of, they don't want to give anything away. They want to keep it for themselves. So your loan that you think is great, or it's not, they've found something better.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to requalify my response in that, we have a very challenging thesis to really understand. And so the value of sort of opening up the kimono to the world is diminished for us because the interpretation of our thesis is wide and vast. So, and we cheat a little bit in that, along with launching the fund, we also organize an online global community of people that some are advisors, some are just friendly co-investors, et cetera, that know what we're looking for. And that, we started with 30, 40 people that we had worked with before. We now have 400 plus people globally that are tuned in to what we're looking for, and so they are the unfiltered sort of source of a lot of the deal flow that we get. So it's necessary for us because we need a growing but core group of folks that get it to save us a lot of time, because we do have a very specific thesis.
All right, this is going to be the final questions before we go to you guys in the audience to ask questions. So if you have a question, write it down and then raise your hand right after this question, after they answer this question. You speak about companies not being ready.
At least for me, there isn't a highly prescriptive answer to that, but broadly speaking, gosh, it depends on the company, because we've funded companies that weren't yet products. We funded them that were just basically a presentation. We funded companies that have already been out in market and making money, and so there's a range of when we come in. And if it's just a presentation, it's got to either be a really good presentation, or you've got to demonstrate that you're an utterly world-class individual, because there's no other data for me to measure. And so when it's just a presentation and it comes in cold, if I don't know the person, then I usually spend maybe a few minutes trying to evaluate whether this person has the capacity to even build what they've claimed they're going to be able to build, because it's only the team that I'm evaluating. And in general, it's the team is where I spend the most amount of my time, but I actually spend a fair amount of time also on brand. And I don't mean brand just how your logo looks, even though that is part of it. I mean brand, like how well are you communicating your story? Are you telling a story that's really aspirational, that after I read it, I'm like, damn, that's really exciting. I want to get on that train before it leaves the station. And if you can tell a really exciting story, then we can find a way to get involved.
So for us, it's pretty simple. 3 things. The first is team. You have to have somebody technical on the team. I know you spoke about this yesterday, but having a CTO, if you're building a tech product, somebody on the team has to be technical. You wouldn't start a restaurant without a chef, right? So you wouldn't have a tech company without a CTO. Second thing is really MVP, minimum viable product. You have to have something that we can try out, we can test it, we can see what people think. And the third is traction. I think for us, it's very hard to invest just on the PowerPoint. We've done it for 2 companies out of over 100, so it's possible. But if you really want to get the most mileage, really try to have an MVP and some traction.
And those are the three things that we're looking for when I scan through a pitch deck. That's really mostly what I'm looking for.
I keep talking about our thesis, and that is a very big part. I'll go back and touch on some of the more practical data points, but you know, our worldview dictates sort of the way that we invest, and that is a theory that urbanization is a trend that's going to continue. Well, let me backtrack. Climate change is the most critical challenge that we face as a species. That's theory number one. Theory two is that urbanization is going to continue as a trend, and cities are going to be the biggest contributor to climate change, but the efficiency of cities can also be the biggest contributor to solving climate change. That's theory two. Theory three is that to make sure that those 2 points converge in a beneficial way requires magic that we don't believe the federal or local government or even social good initiatives or foundations are equipped to do. The only group that's equipped to create the sort of magic and scale necessary to stem these trends are startups. So those are our 3 theories. Now, beyond that sort of in 10 years, do we see this idea changing the way cities work in a dramatic enough way that it can impact the current trend of climate change or impact one of the potential challenges of urbanization? That's the first question I have to be able to answer when I hear an idea. Then it comes back to the more practical things. If it's a technical heavy project, is it a very strong engineering team, not just a CTO? Does more than one person, or at least one person, really understand the engineering and the challenges of building this? A lot of the stuff we look at ends up being hardware because it touches the real world. Second being, if they have had some success before to show not just that that they've had success, but success can mean a lot of things. It means that they've accomplished something that shows that they're, as Kanye put it, a world-class type of person. Because if you are, even by your mid-20s, you should have done something that can sort of be a testament to that. And finally, we do look for a prototype MVP, hopefully that's already in a pilot stage, meaning that not only did you build something, but you also found people that are willing to take your crazy thing, install it on their phone, or install it in their house or their office and give it a try.
And what about you? Because you make community investments. So what questions, or how do you evaluate initiatives before getting involved?
I want another person. And, the first investment I made was I refinanced my hairdresser's mortgage. And she'd been cutting my hair for 3 years, and she had a 7.4 mortgage, and she wanted to do some things in her salon. She wanted to do stuff in her house. And, she'd get all these letters saying, come refinance the mortgage. And she'd go in and they'd say, oh, no, we're not going to do that. And I'm like, okay, I'll cut your rate in half. And that'll be a great, great investment for me. And I get to watch it like every 6 weeks when I go and get my hair done. And I really enjoy it. So I get enjoyment out of my money. I'm contributing to the community. And, I don't think I can find a better investment anywhere. But that's kind of how I like to look at things.
Wow, great. So any questions?
I think the community has seen a lot of talk about the intersection of culture and tech, as well as the importance of diverse founders over the past year. We've really seen an uptick in that sort of conversation in the community. Have you seen it have a real tangible material effect on the number of diverse founders that are walking through your doors, that are sending you pitches? So have you seen it have a material impact there? That's one. Two, the pitches that you are seeing. If so, if those pitches have gone up, have they been good pitches or kind of kookamamie ideas? And then the third piece would be, looking outside of your own firm and outside of your own scope, but to the larger VC community. What's been the response to more sort of diverse founders walking through doors?
Among a litany of things that maybe I take issue with, but is the fact that if you can convince somebody that there is money there, then they'll chase it. And it's starting to become apparent that in people of color, there's so much money there. We are so over-indexed on all of the social media networks. We're so over-indexed in so much of the consumer spending. We're so over-indexed in contributing to these cultural trends. And so investors are realizing that and starting to take notice of that. And so with respect to whether or not there's tangible results at the very back end, yes. That said, there are also, I think we've also, at least personally, underestimated the extent to which game recognized game, and this is a very homogenous game that we're not a part of right now. And the latter piece of that, this is a homogenous game we're not a part of right now, we all know, but the extent to which game recognized game is so pervasive and abundant and deeply rooted in how people make investment decisions, how networks are created and how people break into networks is really profound, which is why I started just like Brian, taking cold pitches, because it's so hard to break into the network, because you are so much more likely to have people in your Facebook network who look exactly like you than not. And if all the investors are white men, then everyone's going to look exactly like them, and so how's anyone going to break in, you know what I mean? And so there's much more work to be done at the beginning of the funnel, but there's so much more awareness now that I think there's opportunity.
And to speak to that opportunity, right? I mean, you look at the numbers, 1% of venture-backed companies, African-American founders, right? And this is from the funding side. 1% for Latino, Hispanic, and 8% for women. The numbers are low. I mean, we saw the 2% tech number 2 presentations before. At Camper Capital, we're at 46% in our current portfolio, either a person of color or a woman founder. And the way we do that is we go to conferences like this one to look for companies to write checks to, right? And you can't just talk about it. You really have to go out there, and you're still trying to find the best companies. You know, you're not lowering the bar at all. It's why we go to Women 2.0 to look for companies. I mean, I could list off probably 10 conferences last year alone that we went to for strictly the strict purpose of finding deals. And what we've noticed is that when we do a deal, we're never going to do a deal alone. So we're bringing in other investment firms who probably would never have seen that company. And there's power in that, right? And there's power in working together, how we just worked on our last deal. So we've got a lot of work to go, but I think there's a huge opportunity. I think it's still out there for the taking. And we need more people who are on the funding side as well as on the building side to make it happen.
So I'm going to make an admission that I'm not afraid to make, which is that I do not use a color filter either professionally or personally. Color just has absolutely no relevance to me, or at least I try to make that true as much as possible. Second point is that I think I'm working on an interesting enough challenge that it's the people that are trying to solve the problems that we're interested in are wide and vast and varied. So we don't necessarily need to make a concentrated effort to find diversity in the pool of people, of talented people that are working to solve these challenges. So we have a little bit of an advantage because, you know, entrepreneurship and what I call caring entrepreneurship that's based on building something that helps people's lives is also colorblind, thankfully. But having said both of those things, I do appreciate the fact that I look in the mirror and I see a minority, for lack of a better word, a colored entrepreneur. So when I meet an entrepreneur that's of a different shade of skin color, it's not foreign to me that this could be a great entrepreneur building something great. Whereas, yeah, when your entire professional experience, if you are of one ethnicity and you've built a business where most of the people you work with were of one ethnicity, and now you're in venture capital, and most of the references of founders that you've seen become successful are of one ethnicity, it's very easy to just fall into this, again, filters, and adding that sort of, this guy or girl doesn't look like what I've already modeled in my mind as success. So I have the advantage of knowing that success can have various shades. I also have the advantage of having a co-founder who, while he's a white male, is South African and grew up during a time where he had a lot of opportunity to define his sort of understanding of the value of people of different skin tones. So it's just something we don't track. I think we have minorities and women in our portfolio. It's just not important to me.
How you doing? My name is Jay Jackson with Rise Interactive. And I want to first of all make a point that I agree with you that many times trying to break into that network is very, very tough for a minority entrepreneur. Very tough, because it is really based on relationships, and a lot of times they don't have it. But also in your all's world, the investor world, so these entrepreneurs, they have this great idea, but even understanding the language that is spoken in the investment world, which is also a different world. I have a great idea, a great product, but how do I speak that language? What do you recommend in terms of a resource or something that could help entrepreneurs understand how to even speak the language, so that when they're pitching to you, they know how to pitch, so that you can really, they really communicate?
I've got two, and it's really easy. The first one is a book called Lean Startup by Brad Feld. That will give you all of the lingo you'll probably need to navigate Silicon Valley. Eric Ries, sorry. The second one is Venture Deals by Brad Feld. So first one, Lean Startup by Eric Ries. There you go. Thanks for the correction. Those are the two resources.
I would also add Twitter. It just is so powerful, because venture capitalists are so active on it, and there's a friend of mine named Ruben Harris, who wrote a really nice post on Medium talking about breaking into the tech world. And he was in Atlanta working in finance, and he was like, I want to be in San Francisco working in tech. And he just basically made himself inevitable on Twitter, because he was always saying something smart to somebody, and eventually people were like, who is this dude? And so it's not the way that works for everybody, and so I'd recommend that. But also because there's some really great venture blogs out there, and I'm just going to run through a few of them just so you can start to get your head around them. I find that Paul Graham has really great essays. I think that Renee DiResta, No Upside, she has some really interesting stuff. I love Brad Feld's. Mark Suster's is good. David Hornick's is good. Eileen Lee's is good. Fred Wilson's is good. And so use Twitter and read those blogs. Then you'll start to learn the language instinctively as well.
You forgot to mention your own blog.
Mine's not that good.
Yeah, no, it's good. So I'll add to that by suggesting going through the recorded archive of Sam Altman's Y Combinator, or not Y Combinator, but Sam Altman did a startup school, a course at Stanford that was recorded over a number of months. Very impressive group of guest lecturers. All of the terminology and concepts around building a startup are covered in that. It's a worthwhile investment to go through that. And then I'll just take a second to go back and finalize my last answer. Regarding being a venture capitalist of color, while I'm not personally focused on focusing on finding more founders of color, because it's just happening naturally, I am personally focused on finding more venture capitalists of color, because I think that can become, if there is in fact, which I know math shows that there is in fact a challenge of minorities and women being VC funded, it starts at the funders. And so I'm encouraged to continue to build and find peers like Kanye and Brian, right, we just met. And then to try to encourage more minorities and women to get into the venture side of things.
Just to add to that as well, I highly recommend just going places, meetups, events, conferences, and talk to people. You know, too many times you see people just sit in a seat and they don't talk to people. They don't learn people's story, and don't over talk people, right? Really hear some of the stuff that people have to say, because you never know, who you're talking to, or what experiences they have, and what knowledge they have to give to the world. When I first got, so I'm 22, I work as a VC like these guys, and I got into tech because first off, Groupon, I was really in love with the idea of what they did for small businesses. But I went over to another VC in Michigan, John Treese from Ludlow Ventures. He sent me to San Francisco for the first time. I never left Michigan by myself, of course, family trips, but never by myself. First time in California. I went there, and Launch Festival is ran by Jason Calacanis. It's at this time, it was maybe 5,000 people or so. Now it's grown to 11,000 people every year. And I literally talk to everyone, like no joke, like hundreds of people. I left with probably a bucket of cards. But I mean, the reason being, I mean, some of these guys I didn't know at the time because I wasn't really well versed in tech, but I ended up talking to Thomas Court, who's a former Googler and works at AngelPad. Well, he started an accelerator called AngelPad. The guy, within 15 minutes, offered me an internship at AngelPad, and he hadn't even formulated what the accelerator would be, but David Cohen from Techstars, who he created Techstars with Brad Feld and some other guys, and I've since continued to develop a relationship with him. But you just never know like who you're talking to, and they're looking for people like you, right? If you're a hungry entrepreneur, or an investor, or an aspiring entrepreneur, they're looking for people like you, and they want to work with you, and you have something of value. Just because you haven't done something yet, there's experiences that you've been through, and ideas that you have that are worth sharing. So.
My name is Eric Kelly, and I'm the CEO of a private health foundation up in Palm Beach. And you just mentioned your age and made me feel real old, all of a sudden, real old. Young brother right here, you made a comment about philanthropy not being able to solve the issues that we're facing today, and we agree. Our foundation, we have $150 million under management, and every year we grant out about $8 million. Traditionally to nonprofits, but we're working with for-profits and businesses, and we're actually, it's not a shameless plug, I told Felicia I'd actually mention this, we are hosting a hackathon in 3 weeks, March 28th, 29th up in Palm Beach, but it's called Code for Good, because it's a social enterprise movement, or a social entrepreneurial movement. We are trying to find ways to use philanthropy to help solve some of the problems. What would you say to a foundation like ours, where we traditionally work with nonprofits, but want to get into this world where you live? What else do we do? How else can we get those problems solved using business and innovation?
Well, I mean, I admittedly am in a sort of a bit of a hammer and nail paradigm right now, which is everything to me looks like a problem that startups should solve. Because when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And if you're interested in the nonprofit world, in really scaling your ability to impact these challenges, my opinion is always going to be find a way to be supportive to startups. I think a hackathon is a great start because a lot of startups, or at least friendships that eventually become startups, are born from hackathons. So it's a great start. There's a lot to be learned from the Knight Foundation and the work that they did in encouraging and helping build the startup community here in South Florida, in Miami specifically. And while their focus might not have been specifically around the sort of thesis that I have, Urban Us was born out of that ecosystem. There are a number of startups that are working to solve the sorts of challenges that we're interested in out of that ecosystem. So the more that foundations and local governments can do to encourage startups, and hopefully specifically startups that are solving these sort of challenges, the more you can scale your dollars. I mean, I don't know, your charter might not encourage donation or grants to for-profits, but figuring out a way to still work within that ecosystem and to help encourage, private market, high growth opportunities.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Jasmine Wheeler, and I'm the CEO of Femnor International, and I just want to thank you brothers up here for coming and telling your story, but most importantly for the youth that are here, because you're in a profession that's not necessarily glorified on TV. So my question is more geared toward the youth. Being that you guys are, black men, and you guys are investors, and you're in that space, what is your advice to youth that may, this may be their first time hearing about becoming an investor? So what is your advice to maybe getting into that door, getting their foot in the door? What would you recommend?
You want to?
Follow this man, first of all, because everything he was saying is gospel. Frankly, he didn't know what he didn't know, and that's one of my favorite things about innovators is they just will charge blindly into the fray, and find themselves way in over their head, and then all of a sudden end up adding so much value that they didn't even realize they could add. And so be courageous and be bold, and don't be afraid to email somebody, and print some business cards, put your email address on them, and give them to every single person you meet, including everybody on this stage. Be a bull and don't stop, and you'll make yourself inevitable. And I've seen so many people do that don't look like us, that's the first piece of advice is assume that I want to talk to you and assume that everybody out there wants to talk to you and get in their faces and say, hey, I got stuff you want to know about, trust me. You know, I'm culture, as they say, right? And so it's as simple as that.
Go ahead, Brian, actually. Okay, yeah, so I'd add to that, take it serious. People come to events, they go places. If you're here, pay attention, right? Like these are people who, these guys are so much, including Diana, so much more busier than me, and I'm busy. So, we're not here, just because we wanted to, well, partially we wanted to come to Miami, but also because we wanted, learn from you guys, but also talk with you, talk to you about your dreams. I was telling Derek and some of the other guys, yesterday after my talk, I spent some time chatting with some students from Miami-Dade College, and some people can attest. It was 3 hours worth of people waiting in line to talk with me, which was, by the way, humbling, but ridiculous. We want to be here to help you guys. We're a resource, right? And us being investors and having access to money is a tool, right? And I always say for myself, I know some guys are more capital focused. I'm a support system before an investor for entrepreneurs. I want to invest in people who want to inspire the world, who are really passionate, who are hungry, who frankly just don't care, right? Like they don't care that what they're going after is crazy. And that's what I love. I've talked to founders who we didn't even close deals with at 3 in the morning because they're going through stuff in their personal life or their professional life and they need someone to bounce ideas off of. So, feel free, and I've given out a ton of cards, but my number's on my card. I'm in a group text message now with some kids from Miami-Dade College, so I'm accessible. Just reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help out, and I'm sure these guys and Diane as well feel the same way.
So,
No, go ahead.
I'll say is that we're no different than the folks sitting in the seats, right? So when I got started, I didn't set out to be an investor, right? I didn't set out to even start a tech company. I was just a kid who loved sneakers, right? I'm a sneakerhead. If you show me any Jordans from 1 to 24, I could probably tell you what it is still to this day. And I got involved with tech from selling sneakers on eBay, right? And becoming a power seller and trying to go around eBay's system because they take like 10% of your sale. And I didn't want to give up 10% of my sales, so I just did direct to customer. And I built my first website. And then so I said all to say, just do something, right? Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be perfect. You could just get started today. I got started with sneakers. For you, it might be something different. But the key is to get started because every time you go through it, you learn something. And if you talk to a lot of the founders who get funded, it's not their first startup. It's not their second startup. It's like their fourth. But you don't hear about the other 3 that failed. You hear about the one that got funded that ended up in TechCrunch. So start something today would be my advice.
So my advice is a little less practical in that, I stated before, I'm less idealistic or fan, I don't look at being a VC or being in VC or being an entrepreneur as some sort of like everybody should be striving to attain that. It goes back to one of my core beliefs that the reason why you're doing something is more important. And if you're like trying to be an entrepreneur because you're chasing this concept of being free and being your own boss, you're gonna very quickly find out that you actually end up being all of your customers end up being your boss, and all that free time you thought you were gonna gain is actually the opposite because you're gonna be working overnight most of the time, 15-hour days. And if you think getting into VC is some way that means all of a sudden you're making a bunch of money, there are way easier ways to make money than getting into venture capital. So your reasons should be deeper than those two. And again, start with figuring out what you're passionate about and figuring out what makes you feel most fulfilled about how to execute on that passion. And if you end up as being an entrepreneur, great. If you end up being an employee, a very valuable employee, great. If you end up in venture capital, great. It's a very wide and vast and varied path to venture capital. If you end up here, I'd be really happy to see that, but it's not the end-all be-all. Find your own path to solving the problem or to creating the world that you would like to see.
Hi, this question is for Diane. I wanted to know, how are you using economic strategies to help nonprofits like in Lake Worth, Florida?
I guess I'm not. I'm trying very hard to look at things differently. I've worked with For the Children in Lake Worth for 15 years. I was honored to be their first CFO, and I think we're ready to go to another level. And now, as we've been talking about what we want to do, I know Derek wants to build a tech campus. We have 5 acres, and we have a big down payment. So how are we best going to use that to go in? And I'm looking at a humanistic way of looking at that to help, and I'm not going to do it. It's going to be a collaborative effort. We're just talking about, well, what if people really want to make something happen, would they give us money without a return? So we're going to be looking at a lot of different things, but it's been my honor to work with this group, and it's really nice to see it go to a new level.
Yeah, no, cheers to that. Really appreciate you guys for taking the time here to sit with us, and Derek and Felicia and the entire team for putting this on and inviting us. You guys as well for coming down and speaking. I really think this is the start of something new. I mean, all of us have, I'm sure, spoken at super large events, 1,000 person, 1,500 people, 5,000 people, and I've had the best time of my life here in Miami, hanging out with the attendees, hanging out with the speakers. I was telling some of the guys in the back, this is like a family reunion. I was out. I mean, Katie, I don't know where she's at, but I was out with her and her cousin Xavier last night. And I just met them like a few days ago. Like we were just hanging out. So no, it's truly like that's what events like this is all about, and proximity of greatness and great people. So I hope you guys continue to stay and then also come back next year.